Welcome in, everybody, to Basketball by Association. My name is Arky. Shea, that is Joel C. Cordes over there talking to you on this fine afternoon, evening, morning, or maybe it's midnight where you're at. I don't know when you're listening to this. All I know is you're about to get some ball and basketball knowledge. Joe, good to see you again, my friend. What is up? How did you enjoy your time with Matt D'Agostino last week?
I mean, Matt was great. And to all of our listeners out there, if you're still with us after that intro, join me in saying, turn down the main Skid Row. What the hell?
Whoa.
Come on,
hey,
man.
Listen, I'm sorry. If you want to take a nap during this podcast, that's fine. That's not how I live my day-to-day life, brosif.
I do have two things that you are going to like.
Okay, good.
Number one, I'm going to say this right now after having watched him multiple times, including a 1-point win over my Timberwolves. Your Auburn guy, Walker Kessler, today is better than Rudy Gobert.
He's good, isn't he?
He's better than Rudy Gobert. I'm not talking peak Rudy Gobert. I'm talking Rudy Gobert today. Walker Kessler is better than him. The Jazz got the better player, and they got a whole bunch of other very useful, good players and picks. This is looking worse and worse. But we're not talking Timberwolves. We're not talking Gobert. We've done that plenty enough. Here's the other thing you're going to like. This is episode 131. Mm-hmm. There's only one player in NBA history who's logged 131 career playoff games.
Okay.
He was drafted by the New York Knicks in 1987-88. He was Rookie of the Year that year. He was on the all-rookie team, obviously. He was a one-time all-star. He is fifth on the all-time assists list. He had a long and mostly illustrious career in the league. The only knock against him, he never got a ring.
Okay.
And that pick that was used to acquire him turned into Scottie Pippen, who was taken by the Seattle Supersonics but was traded on draft day. So would the Knicks rather have had Scottie Pippen than this guy? Probably, but
who knew about Scottie Pippen?
Yeah, who knew? That's a very, very fair point. This guy logged 5 seasons, playoff seasons with the Knicks to start his career. Played with the Clippers, played a long time with the Pacers, did a stint with the Raptors, came back to New York, wound up with the Jazz and the Rockets to end things. I would hope you can guess this guy. Again, fifth on the all-time assist list.
Fifth all-time assist lists.
Mm-hmm.
See, Knicks 87. See, this always gets me like the exact year of a draft. It sort of always stumbles me just a little bit because 87, 80. Wait, 86, 87 or 87, 88?
87, 88.
87, 88. It said 5 straight years, the playoffs to start the year, start his career with the Knicks.
With the Knicks, yep.
Fifth all-time assists. Man, I got to be honest with you. Like, I don't know any record holders. No. Hold on. I think I'm going to get this. Just give me a second. When it just comes to numbers, like basketball is such a different thing. Like, do you know the number of most points scored all time? Right? Like, do you know what that? It's not. They're not hallowed numbers. It's just harder to sort of pick that list. Okay.
He led the league in assists just one time, just one season. He did that, but he did do it.
I want one more hint. Where did he end his career?
He wound up with the Rockets. That's not going to be helpful.
Okay, where's the last time he maybe no?
The last time he was super relevant would have been with the Indiana Pacers. But then
Mark Jackson.
It's Mark Jackson.
Mark Jackson. Okay, yeah.
He did a couple seasons with the Knicks after the Raptors and Pacers coming back and did a season with the Jazz and the Rockets, but nobody remembers that.
He was fifth all-time in assists?
Fifth all-time.
Wow.
He had a season where he averaged 11.4 assists and led
he ended his career fifth or is currently fifth?
He's currently fifth all-time.
Currently? Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, this is a guy who played 16, 17 seasons and averaged double-digit assists. Just 3 times, I guess.
I was gonna say, like,
his high water mark was 96, 97, 12.3 assists, but he had multiple seasons of 8 or 9 assists per game as well.
All right,
adds up. Adds up.
I guess it does. You give 5th all time. I mean, it's not like the 3-point record, right? Like that thing's just going to be like whoever's the top 5 now is going to be in the top 30 by the time we figure out
whoever suited up for tonight's game gets the record.
Which might be Steph Curry. Actually, I don't know if he's suiting up against Boston. I think he plays Boston tonight. So Joel Z. Cordes, this is the Mark Jackson episode. How about that? Okay, very cool. All right. Well, let's start with the Knicks. No, I'm kidding. Let's start with something I think, we get to this time of the year where, we can every week be doing an episode on like, hey, what were the last 3 games like for the Nets and stuff like that, right?
Right.
That's fine. We've got a whole bunch of seasons still to go.
If this were a daily show, I would absolutely do that. But somebody's got to pay us to do that daily.
Are you people listening? Pay us to do that. Okay, someone. I don't know, maybe we start a Patreon one day. They want to see us do this daily.
Or a GoFundMe.
Oh, gee. And Joel, that makes it seem like we're a charity case.
I mean, they've funded movies that way. They've crowdsourced movie funding that way. Why not?
Yeah, but
let me quit my day job and we'll just do this every single day and talk about the 3 games from last night and who now holds the 3-point record.
We don't have an end number we want to get to. We just want all the money to keep coming. So we don't want to get to like $44 and then we just cash out and we're done. We want to go 44 and beyond. Okay, so there's.
I want to be the all-time leader in crowdfunding money from GoFundMe. That's let's do this, people.
Okay, well, that's something for me to create over the weekend. Thank you. It's all right. Okay, so we could talk about a lot of things, like how the Kings all of a sudden are like a top 3 in the West, and they're hosting at this point, which is a pretty cool story. We could be talking about how the Celtics sort of refound some of their mojo, and even though quietly certain players on their team should be MVP candidates, but are not having a spectacular night overall, but then just had a 50 night the other night.
And nobody batted an eye because we're used to it from him now.
Because we're 100% used to it. And I think Luka had like a 60 again or something. Like, there's just no spectacularness from the Celtics. And hey, listen, the Celtics are even talking about getting that kid, that big kid from San Antonio. What's Jakob Partle? Anyway, so there's a lot of stuff like that we could talk about, but let's break this down as around the halfway point. Let's look at some of the jobs that these coaches have been doing. All right, Joel, I want to take a look at a few of these coaches, but first, I have a few I want to ask you about specifically.
Sure.
If you don't name them in coaches that you think are doing a good job or a bad job, I want you to give me a chance to name some of those first off the top of your head. Then I have a couple I don't think you're going to name, and I want to ask you
let's do your list first. Let's do your list first because I'm intrigued. Let's talk about them, and we'll see if they would have made the list. I'm not stalling for time. I'm just curious.
Okay, that's fine. Because this was one I didn't think you were going to get to, but I hate to lead with this one, but I feel like I have to. What do you think about the job Tom Thibodeau's doing?
So you did, after all that, you did lead with the Knicks.
You pushed me to it. He was the first one I was going to bring up because I didn't think you were going to get to him on your really good or really bad list.
Yeah.
So I thought he would be one that we wouldn't necessarily mention, but it's also a team that's, I think, should be better than they are. It's kind of underachieved last season to a degree.
Definitely.
Probably should be a little bit better than what they are now. And again, we've talked about before, from firsthand, it's a personality that grinds on people. Now the Knicks are more relevant, are better, have better talent, friendlier contracts to them. They may be somebody where if the Knicks get a shiny object in the corner of their eye, that James Dolan comes back down from his Blues tour and said, hey, let's make a move. That's all I'm curious. I just want to hear from your perspective because I still think he's a fine coach and okay, but there's not a lot of coaches that get a whole lot of leeway anymore in the NBA.
No, so I'm glad you brought him up. He was going to get a honorable or dishonorable mention from me in my list, insofar as Thibodeau was on the hot seat coming into this season. And because of how badly they underachieved last year, because it is the Knicks, it's that market, it's that owner, coaches don't get a lot of leeway, all those things that you said. However, as you and I have discussed, as Matt D'Agostino and I discussed last week, the Knicks have at least an identity this year.
You discussed the Knicks without me?
I did. Yeah.
That's so kind of
in
you.
your honor, but also to spite you, to say, hey, this is what's going to happen if you miss a week. That's the week we're going to talk Knicks. No, like, they're better off than they were last year, but that shouldn't be saying anything because they were really disappointing last year after, a strong Julius Randle season 2 years ago, and they should have reloaded more. So they've got a winning record. I think Tibbs has bought himself enough time to get to the end of the season. And if it were me, if the Knicks are in the top 6, Thibodeau keeps his job. So if they avoid the play-in, Tibbs has bought himself another year, but knowing that it's the kind of another year where if they get off to a slow start or they're underachieving by next year's All-Star break, it's time to go.
So that's what I was going to say. Like if you buy yourself another year, is that the same as saying, like, this is the coach we believe in, like it has this team? Now, again, only halfway through this year, so a lot of things can still happen. And I think, what are they, 5 games out in the East? Of hosting. No, 3.5 games out. Of hosting and playoffs. So they're not
playing respectable ball. Yep.
Yeah. So,
I guess the question becomes: are you better off with Tibbs or without him? If there was a dynamite candidate out there, like you said, the shiny object that the Knicks really just have to have, you could talk yourself into the idea that Tibbs has had a shot. But I think you only talk yourself into that after he's had 3 full seasons to go, hey, we made it 2 out of 3 years, but this 3rd year we were in the play-in tournament. There's no way we should have been in there. If they miss the playoffs for some reason, then yes, he absolutely has to go. And I think if he's in the play-in tournament this year, that's not enough of an improvement over where they were last year. It would represent a second half collapse to an extent where they're 4 games over 500 now. And now you talk yourself into the best available guy that you can get, and you shuffle the deck because it's been 3 seasons. But if he gets you into the top 6, now he's been able to do that 2 out of the last 3 years. You had a down year, sure, but you can make the case that they just needed some better players and a deeper team, which they do have this year. And you make the case that guys like Mitchell Robinson have become everyday starters where you don't worry about them anymore. There's other guys in that rotation that have taken a step forward. Tibbs has played more guys than normal. They have been at a faster pace this year than typically under Tibbs. They're shooting more threes. You can make the case that there's been enough progress to go, we shouldn't fire the guy because he got us into the top 6 2 out of 3 years. Come on. Let's see how he does next year, but we better be taking another step forward next season.
I'll say this, and we move on to my second guy. I immediately say that I think he needs to win a playoff round this year. But I don't mean like a playoff tournament game or something. I think he needs to win
a first round.
The bad part is, like, that top part of the East is stacked.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you do get the 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or this. Dude, I mean, your matchups 1 through 4 ahead of them, no matter sort of where you match up, 6, 7.
1 through 5, really.
Yeah,
I mean, depends on what Kevin Durant does in coming back, but I'm assuming Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, and Cleveland here.
Yeah, it's not. They're not. Neither one of them are good matchups for you for a 7-game series. So it makes it difficult. I would at least want to, if that's the case, I need to see a real competitiveness in the playoffs. You can't have what happened to you to Atlanta a couple years ago and sort of still be the same guy. You can get blown out of that job now, I think, at this point, and Knicks fans be like, okay, good, we expect better, because you do have better players, you do have a better setup, you do have a better core to build around.
I'll say this too before we go to the next guy. You look at the Bucks, the Sixers, and the Cavs. All 3 of those teams are absolutely equipped to neutralize Julius Randle in a series because of their massive front lines, because of the amount of talent on those front lines. Boston is a little bit different and maybe a little bit weaker there. That's assuming that Robert Williams III is exactly where he is now and isn't taking a step forward. The problem is, as you said, Boston is so good in so many of the other areas that even if Julius Randle gets off for a better series, you're probably losing it somewhere else because you don't have multiple guys to check Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and the waves of competent role players that Boston's going to bring at you. So it's a tough one. Like, Brooklyn might be the best matchup, but that's assuming that Brooklyn is even able to hang on into the top 6, which could happen. But I mean, it gets real sketchy there. You almost got to hope that Brooklyn falls out, that the Knicks can get into the top 6, and that they wind up facing somebody like Miami or Atlanta again, where those are flawed teams that the Knicks are not necessarily the favorite in, but they're not an underdog by any means either, as currently constructed.
Billy Donovan, give me your thoughts on what Billy Donovan's done so far. 20-24 as we speak, coming into this. This was a team who both of us thought that was going to be at the elite level this year. Thought they were poised to be able to be top 2, top 3, probably at the worst in the East this year. It's not the case right now for them, and probably isn't going to be the case for them this year because you see the top 3, how big of a lead they start already building up before the All-Star break. So give me your thoughts on Billy Donovan with the Chicago Bulls and in his 2022-2023.
He is one of the guys I was going to put on my hot seat. There's the huge caveat that the Bulls were world beaters when Lonzo Ball was healthy and they had that starting 5 intact, although they were without Patrick Williams a lot of last year. But you got a career year out of DeMar DeRozan last season. I don't think you're getting career years out of him going forward, even though he still is a very good player. But
wait, you mean when DeMar DeRozan went for like 40 for 40 straight nights or something like that?
Right.
That was a career year?
DeMar DeRozan is at that point of his career where he probably shouldn't be one of your top 2 best players. And realistically, for the Bulls, that should be Zach LaVine and it should be Nick Vucevic. That has not panned out to be that way. Having Lonzo Ball would be helpful there because then you'd have Ball and Vucevic to help carry some of that load. And DeMar could be the second guy on certain nights, but you wouldn't absolutely be relying on it. It just feels like Billy Donovan has had a reputation of making more than what he's got. He did that in Oklahoma City. He did that with the Bulls last year, but it's not happening this season. They're dropping a lot of games. They don't seem to have an identity. The shallow roster construction, which was a major concern last year, where we were looking going, this is a great top 7 on their team, 7.5 guys. But after that, yikes, it gets scary. That came back to bite them last year. It's biting them right now. That's not Billy Donovan's fault. But, unless the general manager is going to fire himself, or you swing that trade, maybe it is time to trade DeMar DeRozan and get him to an actual contending team that can use him, and you get another young guy in there and you buy another year waiting for a young guy to develop, and you take the pressure off of playoff performance this year, and you say, hopefully we've got Lonzo back by next year, and then we'll assess Billy Donovan after that. I think that's the way, given that Chicago is typically pretty conservative about everything, that's probably the way they will go. But if they drop out of the play-in or they go on a massive losing streak and it looks like Donovan is losing the locker room, he is one of the guys who could get canned. And by the way, he would immediately become one of the shiny type of objects that could unseat a Tom Thibodeau in New York, where regardless of the fact of what Donovan has done this year in Chicago, you cannot at this point talk yourself into Tom Thibodeau being the better NBA coach than Billy Donovan. It's not possible. Like Thibodeau 10 years ago, sure, you could talk yourself into that. You can't anymore. So Billy Donovan will have no shortage of NBA suitors if he chooses to stay in the NBA, which I think he probably will, but the college game will come calling again too. Like he is a good coach.
Sure. So there's some discontent with like Kentucky, for example. Kentucky's also been linked to losing John Calipari to Texas, who Texas is really ready to make that push right now for their facilities for push for Final Fours and national title contention, like they did once before. Yeah, obviously, the Knicks are someone who would definitely be very interested in a Billy
Here's
Donovan.
another name. Here's another name for the Knicks. Quinn Snyder is out there.
I think Quinn Snyder would be good. I think Quinn Snyder would be really, really good for this team. I don't know. Like, I know there are a lot of people that seem to like Billy Donovan as a head coach, as far as being a guy who overachieves with the team that he has. But now that he has a really, really good team, and yeah, we could argue that DeMar DeRozan sort of hit a wall. Sure, I don't know. He's going to get at least another one more shot minimum in the NBA from somebody. I don't know. I know he probably is not very interested in going back to the college game. But if I'm Chicago, I feel like I'm in a similar position as New York, right? Which is just the idea that we should be a lot better than this. We should be back at the top of the East where we thought we would be. We've done the right things in the draft. We've done the right things in the offseason. We have put ourselves in a position to be one of the top 4 or 5 seeds. We can't go out like this. I mean, what are they, 4 games under 5? Where are they at in the East? They're 10th in the East. They're
20 and 24.
Yeah, so they are. Let's see. Yeah, they're in the play-in right now, but barely hanging into the play-in right now. And I don't know, man. I think Billy Donovan, that there is an underachievement there for this team that is concerning, especially since it's in the face of expectations that had this year, and that does worry me, and it's been a bit of a disappointment again. They have 38 games to go, so they might steer the ship right to get back in the top 5 or 6. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Let me ask you. Let's go to the positive side. Mike Brown, brother. And the Sacramento Kings. Look at the Kings, man. They're like, hey, winning's fun. Let's keep doing it. Right? And look at it with a
25 and 18. Winners of 5 in a row, 7-3 in their last 10.
Listen, if it wasn't for the Nuggets who won 8 in a row and the Grizzlies who won 11 in a row right in front of them, for some reason, because of that slight losing streak of 1 or 2, they're 6 games back. But that's still 3rd in the West at this point. This is a wonderful, wonderful story for the NBA and wonderful for Mike Brown.
Remember, like a couple weeks ago, we were saying this has been a silly NBA season so far. There's too much parity. Nobody's jumping out. But all it's going to take is for some teams to hit those winning streaks. Well, it's happening. Boston's won 7 in a row. Denver 8, Memphis 11, Sacramento 5. Like it's that time of year now where the chemistry has begun to gel. But injuries also start to seep in for other teams. So if you're healthy, relatively speaking, and you have good chemistry, you can start to rattle off those long win streaks that all of a sudden inflate your record. And like you said, good for Mike Brown. Mike Brown, by all accounts, from fellow coaches, they have a ton of respect for him.
He's a good guy. People like him. He works hard. But he's a respected guy.
Yeah, it's not just – so there is that aspect to it. Like, nobody ever calls Mike Brown a bad guy. But it's more than just, oh, he's a good guy, we like him. When you hear coaches talk about Mike Brown, there's a huge respect for his knowledge of the game, his stick-to-itiveness, his work ethic, and what have you. I don't know that that's always translated to the way that players and the fans perceive him, because, yeah, he had some success in Cleveland, but that always gets said, well, but it was LeBron. Because look what happened when Mike Brown came back after LeBron had left. He couldn't do it. He lasted 1 season there. He had a disastrous season with the Lakers. And he's been a good assistant, but maybe he's just better off being an assistant guy. Mike Brown is kind of lucky that he got another shot, given the number of shots that he's had. But I think it's been a testament to the fact that he has been a well-regarded assistant on some very, very good teams, including the Warriors, to kind of build up that respect level again, at least among the organizations, the GMs, the coaches, and what have you. And so it is cool that he's able to deliver right now with the Kings. And they're not a perfect team. Maddie and I talked about them last week. You and I have talked about them a little bit. They're another one of those where it's like, oh, this starting five is nice. It's real nice. And they've got some good bench players too. Do they have enough top flight talent to really go toe-to-toe with the big boys? Maybe on a game-by-game basis, but will it be for a whole series?
I don't know that they
we'll
don't.
Find out.
Because health has become a huge issue the last few seasons for teams. Yeah. So it's being healthy at the right time.
At the right time, sure. But this is one of those teams that if you run into any health issues, there's not enough depth there to really support it.
For them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that if they are fully healthy, the Kings speaking, I don't think that there's any reason to think that the Kings can't compete deep into the playoffs, right? To get maybe to the Western. When I say deep, I do literally just say the Western semi, right?
The semis, yeah. Could they win a round?
Oh, sure. They can win a round. Absolutely can win a round. I mean, it's all matchups. It's all matchups, and I think this team is good enough to be able to win. Matchup dependent. It's all matchup dependent, clearly. But I think they can win a round for sure.
See, I don't believe that necessarily. I think they've got a chance. But I look at that top six and who's likely going to be there. Okay. Denver, Memphis are going to be there. The Pelicans likely will be there. The Mavs likely will be there. Now you got the Warriors or the Clippers hanging out in the same division as the Kings, where they could drop the Kings.
Why can't they
into
beat
the play-in?
Why can't they beat the Mavs in a series? You know,
because the Mavs have been there and done this before. They've gone to the playoffs. They've won some rounds now. Luka's an MVP candidate. Sacramento has not done any of those things yet. You know, granted, Sabonis has won I would have to go back and look. Has Sabonis even won a playoff round? I don't know.
No, Indiana hasn't been out of like the
and then he was with Oklahoma City for a little bit there too. So
that's right. Yeah,
you know, like Harrison Barnes would be the one guy, and Kevin Huerter, I guess, won a playoff round. Like, so there's some major questions there about that group as a whole, where you got to prove something, and until then, I'm not picking them as the favorite in any first round series unless somehow they stick up in that top three and you've got kind of a dog that sneaks into the 6th seed. You know, maybe you get that. But so I'm not disrespecting the Kings. Like, you know, I've been one of their biggest proponents since the offseason. I just feel like this is going to be that year where getting to the playoffs and maybe winning a couple playoff games is going to be so sweet. And that might be all you get, but you at least know what direction you're heading in. And then you got to beat last year. Yeah, then you got to beat that sophomore slump, which, you know, hit the Hawks hard last year. It hit the Timberwolves this year. Like, you can be that up and coming team that's got something going, but coming back that next year when you're not a surprise, it's a big deal. And that's going to be the next test for Mike Brown. Like, is this just a case where he got in there and the message was good, kind of like Nate McMillan with the Hawks? The message had a ring to it. Guys competed. You did well, but when the expectations got hotter and the surprise factor was gone, are you still going to be able to do it? I hope for his sake that he can. I hope that Nate McMillan gets this turned around, but it's going to be tough. Like, the Western Conference is tough.
I'll just say there's no reason I don't think they could beat someone like Dallas. Okay. I don't think they'd be the favorites that I would think. But they could beat a Dallas. I think they could beat a Utah if that happens to be sort of their series.
For sure, Utah, but I don't see Utah lasting that long for them.
Whatever. Those are probably the two matchups, especially I think they could win and definitely could win multiple games in.
They could beat Phoenix right now. They could beat Phoenix if Phoenix even gets in. You know, they're down out of the play-in, and Portland is gettable. So is Minnesota or Oklahoma City. But
if it's Memphis, no, I understand. Like, Memphis is going to run them out of the gym. No. I totally get that. We'll be matchup dependent, absolutely. But you know, I maybe I'm getting a little a sack fever, going over here a little bit. Maybe I need to
see a doctor about that.
Yeah. Well, listen, I got appointments after this. So maybe that's what this is about. Okay, so let's do two more real quick if you don't mind. Well, actually, you know what? I've given you my list. Is there anybody that's been off my list that we haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah. I mean, on the hot seat right now, there are two guys that absolutely should be, but they might not be, because to fire them now means that the general manager might as well just go and fire themselves as well. Because There's no way that when the Charlotte Hornets brought Steve Clifford back, they expected to be 12-34, even with the whole Miles Bridges absence going on and the fact that LaMelo's been hurt, blah, blah, blah. And, Gordon Hayward got hurt as expected. But same thing with Nate McMillan in Atlanta. They're sitting in 8th. They made that huge trade for DeJounte Murray. They haven't taken a step forward. But if Nate McMillan hadn't just been signed to an extension, then he would be gone at this point, if not by the end of the season. And Steve Clifford, if this was not his first year in coming back where the Hornets literally went, I guess we're out of ideas. Let's bring back a guy who got us to 500 and made us change coaches in the first place. Let's bring that guy back. Like, if they weren't so devoid of ideas, he'd be gone too. But you can't do that because the GMs might as well fire themselves. And, so they're absolutely on the list. In a different case.
Well, I just want to say real quick, very quick, because I have nothing for Charlotte. Like, Charlotte's just a disaster. Just a disaster from bringing back Steve Clifford to, like you said, to the Bridges off the court kind of stuff they've had to deal with, to the LaMelo Ball injury. Like, it's just a nightmare.
And now they have no identity either.
Yes,
like, at least the last 2 years when they got smoked in the playoffs, they were an entertaining regular season team, right? They had an identity as like run and gun. They're going to come at you. They're going to shoot a bunch of shots. LaMelo's going to play free and easy. They've got guys that can finish and are going to be all over the highlight reel. They at least had that. They don't even have that anymore.
They got nothing right now. They got nothing. And it's just a disaster.
The other guy on my list, we're sticking in the East for a minute. He's been there a long time, which means he's due to go, even though the direction of the franchise and the roster itself is completely out of his control. And it's not as if he's underachieving with what he's got. But Dwayne Casey's been in Detroit forever now by NBA standards. And it's going to be at that point. They're 12-35. They're at the bottom. Unless he had the mandate from the top that said, winning games is not important. Go ahead and develop guys as you see fit. You're safe to do what you got to do. Just get these guys better because we want to try to add Victor Wembanyama to Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren and those guys. If he's following orders, okay. But if that was never said, I don't see how Dwayne Casey survives in Detroit even much longer. It's going to be one of those, we know we're probably not going to keep him at the end of the year. Let's fire him with 25, 30 games to go. Let's give one of the guys on the staff an interim gig and see how he does and just see if there's anything there. And if not, then we're going to go to the coaching level and see if we can get Quinn Snyder or Billy Donovan or somebody else that we can talk ourselves into who might want to come to Detroit, especially if we're able to land, one of the top super attractive picks to go along with the not terrible core of young guys that they have there.
But the issue also there is, Joel, that like, what if that coach turns out to be pretty good and like they, win 50% of their games the rest of the way or 45% of their games? Then all of a sudden they go from a team I think is tied for the second worst record in the league or the second fewest wins, at least right now, to a team that's, tied for like the fifth fewest or something. And all of a sudden you're like, well, all the percentage chances we had of those ping pong balls to give Victor Wembanyama, which, could still technically run our way, may not run our way. So I could see them sticking with Casey for the rest of the year, or at least to the very, very close to bitter end, just to be able to say, all right, we're going to finish this out the right way, so to speak, right? This is his fifth season there. He made the playoffs. Did he make the playoffs his first year? I think he made the playoffs.
I think so, yeah. Because that was still when Drummond was there.
Yep, that was Drummond, and Drummond was just a couple. Well, Drummond's turning into a long time ago there. Starting to turn into a long time ago for Detroit. So I think he made the playoffs his first season. It was terrible the last couple, or the couple seasons after that. Last year, wasn't great either. And now this year's just an abject disaster again. And I think to make a coaching change is probably the right idea. I just don't know if you want to do like if you wanted Quinn Snyder might be excited by the possibility of getting a Victor Wembanyama. Then yeah, because you want
you're not going to bring in any of those guys now. You're going to do that during the offseason.
You want to keep, I think, all the ping pong balls in play for this guy who seems to be this LeBron-esque, once generational type player. Like the dude's like falling off his back foot as a 7-footer making threes right now. Like he's a freak talent, right? So like I think you keep Casey and you say, listen, keep doing all the sucking you're doing because this is fine for us. Could you do a little more actually? Because Houston's over there with like 10 wins or 11 wins or something like that. So let's slow down a little bit.
Here's what I think will happen. They'll trade Bojan Bogdanovic, Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel. Maybe they can get something for Corey Joseph, even if it's just a low second-round pick. They'll trade off the veterans now who have been productive enough to actually help them get these 12 wins. And then they'll fire Casey. They'll give an interim just the young guys and see how he connects with the young guys. He's not possibly going to win more games at that point.
Well, not if you start trading off everybody that's got it.
Exactly. You're going to tie one hand behind his back, and really it's about how does he do with these young guys? Is this the type of guy that we are going to trust with a top prize draft pick? Because we're going to go under the assumption that we are going to get that guy. And if we don't, we'll pivot and do whatever. I think that's where they go. And I'm glad you brought up Houston because that's the other one I want to touch on real quick. There'll be one or two others that'll get a quick mention, but Houston, like John Lucas is supposed to be, unlike almost everybody else that we mentioned, except for maybe Billy Donovan, John Lucas is supposed to be a teacher. He's supposed to be a young guy developer. That's his MO. He hasn't coached veteran-laden groups. He's an assistant who has cut his teeth as the development guy. But you're looking at a Rockets team that at 10-35 and losers of 12 straight, arguably suck worse than they did last year. And they weren't supposed to be this bad this year. They were not going to be good, but you're talking, the expectation was maybe the 12 or 13, 11 seeds, that sort of thing where they would make some progress and they could beat people on certain nights. They shoot themselves in the foot more than any other team. They're disjointed. And you got to start having the question marks of at this point of, okay, is Lucas able to do the one job we hired him to do, which is to teach these guys to stop making the same mistakes over and over and over again? Yeah. I think he's the type of guy where Houston could pull the plug on this early. Mm-hmm. I think Portland, they've got a lot of extenuating circumstances, and Chauncey Billups has done what looks like a really good job on certain nights and then a really lousy job on other nights. And it depends on how impatient Portland wants to be. This would be Billups' second season there, but I think he has less leeway because there's no track record. He's never been a coach at any other level. And we saw what happened to Steve Nash. We've seen what's happened to Jason Kidd when he came in and had no previous track record. The hook happens a lot quicker with those guys than if you've cut your teeth for a while, and you can bank on that. The other team, they're not going to fire him, and it's not necessarily his fault. And he's built so much credibility. I mean, he was just coach of the year for crying out loud. Monty Williams in Phoenix, what's happening with the Suns right now, like there's a lot of dysfunction in the organization. We know that things are not good in Phoenix. There's been injuries for sure. The DeAndre Ayton situation seems tenuous at best still. They would probably move Ayton before they would move Monty Williams as long as James Jones is still the GM. But if a new ownership group comes in,
that's key.
And goes, we want our own guys, and thanks all for doing what you did under Bob Sarver, but it's time to completely get a new feel here in the desert. If James Jones goes, then Monty Williams probably goes too, and not his fault, and he will get another NBA coaching job and will deserve the heck out of it.
Oh yeah, he's earned it.
Just be watching what happens in Phoenix. The seat isn't hot yet, but it's not safe.
I agree. I don't think it's safe by any stretch. But Joel, that's what they say. We will see. We will see, especially when a new owner and when ownership group comes in, who makes that decision and to whom they want to keep and show their loyalty to.
I know Joel, we're almost out of time. I got one question for you real quick. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes,
who would you choose as coach of the year?
Coach of the year right now?
Mm-hmm.
God, that's a man. So here's my. I'm not supposed to speak quick. The issue I have only right now is that do I choose coach that I think has done the best job or coach that didn't expect to be nearly as good right now. And that's what always hurts me with this, because Mike Brown gets a lot of love from me for making this Sacramento team one we thought would be fun and interesting to watch, a really good basketball team.
And that would be his second time getting it, if so, because he got it with the Cavs once.
Yes, you know what? That yes, with the LeBron Cavs, right? Yeah. You know, I'll be honest with you. Like, I think this is an award made for right now someone like Taylor Jenkins. I mean, they when they are good and they're focused and they're in and they've started to click in.
And they're healthy when they've got Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson back, which they do now, and Dylan Brooks is back.
Yeah. They're so good and so fun to watch. So for me, I guess I would go Taylor Jenkins one, slight below Mike Brown, but that's more of the didn't expect it vote from him. Joel, what would you say, Coach of the Year so far?
Mike Malone will be in the conversation, but everybody will go, yeah, but he's got Jokic, and the Nuggets have won a bunch of regular season games before. The other guy who gets honorable mention for me, but I think what works for him works against him. For Joe Mazzulla to be able to step in and keep the gravy train rolling in Boston is really admirable. Yeah. But it also goes, oh, wait, maybe Ime Udoka wasn't as good as we thought, because he turned the ship around and they got the identity and they went on the run, but it kind of looks like the Celtics are really, really good no matter who's coaching them. And does that really speak to Joe Mazzulla, though?
They're better at the front half of the season than the team was the front half of last season. They're much better than what they were. And
I like the Taylor Jenkins pick, though. I like your Taylor Jenkins pick. I think he would probably just barely. He would get it because he's due. Like, he's been due the last couple of years, and other people have stepped into the forefront and gotten their laurels. But it's time to recognize Taylor Jenkins too.
I'll tell you this: I don't think anybody in the East wins it as long as Memphis is this good. So I think it's probably between Mike Malone and him. So at this point, maybe Mike Brown too. But I don't think anybody in the East is winning it this year. If those three teams are still pretty good out there in the West.
I mean, if Will Hardy gets the Jazz into the top 4 or 5, he's going to get some
He'll get some votes. Yeah, sure. Yeah. All right, Joel C. Cortez, that's going to do it for us. That's the Mark Jackson episode in the books. Joel, it's time for you to say goodbye to the good people.
Thanks for the assist, Arky, Shea. If you want to hear the video version or watch the video version, I guess, find us on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff over there. If you want the audio-only version, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes is where you get this here podcast. And yeah, we'll do it again. I've enjoyed it as always, Arky, Shea.
Chef's kiss.